Hello, this is section 7.1, page 1 on decimals and real numbers. So the first thing we're going to look at is this chart and just think about what a number looks like when it's in decimal form. So the chart is kind of telling us, but let's spell it out here. So if we have our decimal point here and we talk about the digit that goes in this space, notice below it's called the units or the ones place, okay? So we're familiar with that. What about the digits that goes here? Well, we call that the tens place. And here we call it the hundreds place. And so forth. So here we've got written, the way it is in the whole number and then in exponential form. So remember ones place is 10 to the 0 because anything to the 0 power is 1. Then 10 to the first and 10 to the second. Okay, so now when we go to the right, so this is the new part. When we go to the right of the decimal point, this first place here is called tenths. Okay, so they've given it to us as tenths. Don't ignore the THS. Here we have tens, which is 2 places to the left. Here tenths is 1 place to the right. Okay, so tenths, as you can see here, is the first decimal, the digit to the right of the decimal point. Okay, and we call that 1/10. Or because it's in the denominator, that's where our negative exponents come from. That means that the value here, whatever this is, belongs in the denominator like that. So instead of 10 to the -1, it's 10 to the first in the denominator. Okay, the next place is the hundredths. Notice again the TH to distinguish between the hundreds place. And that'll be the second digit, 1, 2, see, to the right. So it's this piece here. And we call those hundredths, so 1/100. And because we have 2 zeros in the denominator, it's 10 to the -2. And we can just keep going with this. So here we have what? The thousandths. Here we have the 10,000ths and so forth. Thousands, it's the third digit to the right. We have 1,000 in the denominator. Since there's 3 zeros, we say it's 10 to the -3 in the denominator, and 3 would make it -3, and so forth. Okay, so this first problem here, they want us to rewrite this number in expanded form and its expanded exponential form. So first, we're going to give the expanded form. And I'm probably writing a little bit too far to the right. Let me move that. Okay, expanded form. So we're going to say we have 8 times what? Well, it's 800, so multiply it by 100. Okay, plus, then we have 40, which is 4 times 10 would give us 40. Plus 2 times 1 would give us 2. Then we have the decimal point. Now, how do we're going to read that as and. Let's put that in there. Okay. But we're still going to just keep going as plus. 6 times. Now, here we have to be careful. It would be 6 if we read this. 6/10. So we say 1/10. Plus 1 times. 1 is in the hundredths position. So 1/100. Okay. So that's the number in expanded form. Now they want it in expanded exponential form. Okay, so all we have to do is just change this and say 8 times 10 to the, we want 10 to a power. Well, 2 zeros, so second power. Plus 4 times 10 to the first. Plus 2 times 10 to the what? Well, we don't have any zeros at all, so it's to the 0 power. That's what makes 1. Plus 6 times 10. Now here it's in the denominator, so that becomes a negative exponent, and there's 1 0, so 1 is the exponent. Plus 1 times 10 to the, it's in the denominator, so negative. How many zeros? 2. All right, so that's the answer to that problem. Now let's move over and do this problem. So this one is saying 0.0001. Okay, so let's start off with expanded form first. Okay, so we have 0 times what? 1/10. Okay, we have no tenths at all. Plus we have another 0 times what position would that be? Tenths, hundredths. So 1/100. Plus now we finally have something 1 times 1/, well, what is that? Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So we need 1,000 down there. Okay? Then we're going to do it in the exponential, expanded exponential form. Okay, so everything has to have exponents. 0 times 10 to the what? In the denominator means negative, 1 0 means 1, first power. Plus 0 times. In the denominator, so it has to be 10 to the negative something. How many zeros? 2, so negative 2. Plus 1 times 10 to the negative, since we're a fraction in the denominator. And how many zeros? 1, 2, 3, so it would be negative 3. So this doesn't amount to anything. So you may want to just write it as this, or 1 times 10 to the negative 3. Okay? All right, so now you are ready to do your classwork. So go ahead and do your classwork and then come back and pick up the video. Okay, so now we have some pictures or manipulatives, which of course we don't get to do now. But if we take a look at them, we're familiar with these. We've played around with base 10 blocks a ton. So when you're looking at the fractional part, what you can do is if you say that this whole big one, the one that we used to say was 100, okay? We can now say that that's 1. And then we can deal with fractions. If that's 1, then a strip would be 1/10 of it. So that would represent 1/10. And then the little tiny one would be 1/100th. Okay, so it's just kind of turning around the way you're used to looking at it. If you need to talk about even going further than that, if you use the big one, the 3-dimensional block, okay, if that's 1, then this would be 1/10, because you can see there are 10 of those pieces that would make up that whole. And this would be 1/100th, because if you count each one of these, there would be 10 by 10, 100 of them in there. So 1 out of 100. And then if you take one little block, you could count up 1,000. So 1,000th. Okay, so if we were going to do some games or things with that's how we'd use that. Okay, another way to represent that works out pretty well is money. If we think of this is our dollar, okay? I know what you're probably thinking it's a quarter, but this would be our dollar coin. Okay, so this represents $1. Okay, so unit 1. This is our dime. So how much is a dime of a whole dollar? Well, how many dimes are in a dollar? 10. So if you have 1 and the whole is divided into 10 pieces, because that's how many dimes make a dollar, then that would represent 1/10. And then our penny, to think of it in terms of a fraction, a whole dollar, how many pennies are there in a whole dollar? 100. So if we have 1 penny, it would be 1 out of 100 that makes up the whole dollar. So that's one way to represent it. And when you think about this, the way we would represent a dollar with money is we go like this, right? We use a decimal point in 2 places. How do we represent the dime? We say it's 10 cents, right? 0.10. And how do we represent the penny? It's 1 right there. That's how we represent a penny. So you already know kind of how to convert from a fraction to a decimal. Okay, we're going to do more of that on the next page. That's the end of page 1.